This video is going to be a film study look at Nate Wiggins' play in the Ravens' Week 18 win over the Cleveland Browns with a focus on his first career interception, first pick six. In fact, Wiggins has been a big part of the Ravens' defense's revival. Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington and the hiring of Dean Pease all get various levels of credit for it. I think the availability and reliability of Nate Wiggins in terms of coverage and his coverage versatility also is a big factor in my opinion. He's much better in zone. That's one of the things that I remember seeing when we first drafted him. When I looked at the college film, much better in zone than given credit for. Has the long speed, the quick acceleration to keep up with deeper routes. Deep out concepts are where, in my mind at least, I have a separator in terms of DBs that can cover deep concepts, post, go routes, whatever fades, and can deal with the deep out concept while shutting down shorter routes because he has such lengthy speed and the ability to get from first to fourth gear almost instantaneously. He can kind of play a lag technique, which means a little bit slower in terms of his get off against certain receivers. I'm going to focus the film initially on his interception. I think it's an unusual situation dealing with the quarterback we were dealing with, and I'll kind of delve into my understanding of it as we get into the film, and then we'll focus on some of his coverage against some of the really better, high-quality receivers that he's faced this year, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins being two of them. Let's check out the first interception of his career. It's a Tampa 2 call. Kind of surprising to me that at this point in Week 18, the Cleveland Browns aren't able to check out of this or understand what's probably going to happen. First of all, it's not a cover two beater from a route standpoint. You've got an in-breaking route by Judy, and then I think it's more on the out or the flat route, and that is the route that Bailey Zappi is targeting. And you can see, of course, that Nate Wiggins, great hands, picks it off. My concern in mentioning this, well, the Cleveland Browns season is done, obviously, so I'm not concerned about them, is when you get this 5-1 look by the Ravens with our second safety, Ardarius Washington, lined up in the middle of the field, how does that not scream Tampa 2 to you if you're Bailey Zappi? The coach can't call a Tampa 2 beater, a cover 2 beater, if in that part of the field, in that situation, early in the game, I think it's a 2nd and 7, if our tendency is to play cover 3 against 11 personnel, or our tendency is to play man. This, to me, to the downside of the screen, looks like man. And I think this is the danger that the Ravens defense offers with a guy like Wiggins out there at outside corner. It's just, without being disparaging, it's just not the same offering, not the same level of punishment offered by our defense to the offense on the opposite side with Brandon Stevens. It's just not. This has been a patented look lately to get into a Tampa 2 post snap by the Ravens. The two OLBs, in this case, Kyle Van Noy and Malik Harrison. Of course, Malik Harrison's really, a hybrid inside linebacker, outside linebacker. They're dropping out, and Roquan Smith is the third rusher. I mean, that is a patented look. I'm talking about probably 6 of the 8 or 9 times I've seen that look pre-snap. That's the coverage that has occurred post-snap. So for them not to be able to check out of those particular routes, or for Bailey Zappi to find some kind of way to change the play in a manner that fits him and suits them better is kind of surprising to me. All right, so he could have had an interception earlier in the season. We're going all the way back here to Week 7. Of course, this is early in the game. Marlon Humphrey had 2 of the interceptions, 2 important interceptions, I should say, in this game. And Nate Wiggins almost had his first career win in this kind of cover 3. I think he's great at identifying routes, whether it's zone or match coverages. You can see it's a sail concept. And because he's such a high-level athlete, he's able to bail, so get off here in his thirds, and keep eyes on the quarterback at the same time. Try teaching that to 12-year-old kids. Try teaching that to, hell, even some 17-year-old kids. It's not that it's a small group of people that can accomplish that. It's the fact that Nate Wiggins can do it, and if this ball was thrown on the vertical, he can still turn and go get it. Iosivas, or however you pronounce his name, for the Bengals, was able to beat him deep on a concept earlier in the year, and as a result, Joe Burrow challenged him deep down the field twice in our return match with them. I think one of the reasons why the Ravens drafted him, the athleticism, the playmaking ability. If you've never seen his forced fumble against North Carolina, his last year at Clemson, it's an amazing play. It gives you an idea into his mental toughness, his fortitude to not give up on the play. But also, His ability to lag a little bit in zone or man. Essentially, I don't have to get into fifth gear immediately to keep up with you. I can turn it on once the ball is thrown or as I recognize the ball is being thrown. In this case, it happens to be a cover three. Marlon took his first career interception away from him. It would have been a great opportunity for him to get a pick and then see if he could get yards after the catch. He's also really great at navigating the quarterback to the receiver in terms of his visual. So this is not a target of George Pickens here. It's actually a great read by Ardarius Washington and then a fantastic finish by Roquan Smith. This coverage kind of showed up 2002 when Mike McDonald got here to Baltimore. And so I suspect that what you've got oftentimes is a read of the running back between one or both of those linebackers and the safety. So we're essentially talking about man down here to the boundary, which we know the Ravens play a ton of. I'm talking about his recognition, and I'll slow this down a little bit. Eyes on the quarterback pre-snap, and then Pickens immediately. It's a basic technique at the NFL level or really, high school level, but he's really good at driving on stuff. We haven't yet seen a pick in one of these situations. I could see one occurring, meaning something like this, an in-breaking slant route, and Wiggins jumps in front of it. Very similar, I would say, conceptually to, you may recall, the interception that I think it's Malcolm Butler had for the Patriots in their Super Bowl win against the Seattle Seahawks when people said, hey, we should just run the ball with Marshawn Lynch. If you don't know, Patriots in a goal line look had the ability to stop any and all option run concepts by Seattle out of that look, and that's the reason why they that's the reason why they called a pass play. But Butler drove on an in-breaking route. Very similar concept to the setup that we've got there. We haven't seen a pick yet, but he's got the ability to do so. Like I said, in the first matchup against the Bengals this year, he was beat deep by Io Civis. This is a 4th and 3 in the rematch in Baltimore in the first quarter, and it's Burton, the extremely talented wide receiver from Alabama. This is what I would call a lag technique. There's multiple names for it. Burton's kind of touching him, just trying to create a little bit more space once they get down the field. Right here, just a slight little touch with the arm. Wiggins doesn't have to turn and go because he has such athleticism. I think that the differential between him and Brandon Stephens from a potential standpoint is vast. It's a huge difference between targeting Nate Wiggins over there on our right side and targeting Brandon Stephens on our left. 3rd and 16, he's actually covering Jamar Chase here. It's a sticks blitz zero look by the Ravens. This was an important moment, and I think it says a lot about, we do ask Brandon Stephens to play in this designation as well. But he's been in this situation with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at least 3 or 4 times this year, whereby it's basically man on an in cut, and he doesn't really have any help at all. Against the Steelers, this is Marlon Humphrey's game-changing or game-sealing, I should say, pick 6 in Week 16. We're up by 7 points already. I just love his ability to, I mentioned it a little bit in the lead-in, deal with deep outs in a manner that other DBs aren't able to do so as smoothly, I should say. Just his transitioning, he doesn't really need to change direction. The way he can flip his hips and match deeper out routes. It's a rare trait at the NFL level. We've got to find out at some point, are we going to be able to use him in just absolute solo man-to-man situations? Generally, we play that to the boundary. And a lot of our quarters or split field match coverages, whatever you want to call it, offer man-to-man on number 1. And then whereby we end up playing zone on number 2. Wiggins seems comfortable, if you ask me, in all of those situations. There just doesn't seem to be any coverage structure or any coverage scheme that he's not comfortable with. And from an athletic standpoint, like I said, got the ability to play man. I want to break down the Tampa 2 one just a little bit more because there's a couple more things I'd like to mention with it, and then we'll get into some more film from the Browns game. So number 1, Marlon's at safety here, which is really cool usage for him. I wish that we could get another quality outside corner such that Marlon's potential usage as a nickel DB, slot corner, whatever you want to call it, can be retained in 2025. Usually we have a setup where Nate Wiggins and Ardarius Washington are on our left, and Brandon Stevens and Kyle Hamilton are on our right, and then Marlon Humphrey is playing the nickel or slot DB. This Tampa 2 look, it is slightly different from a couple of other ones in that Marlon is already lined up here. Oftentimes, for us to get this accomplished, Marlon would be here and Ardarius would be somewhere in that direction. And then post snap or right at the snap, Marlon would fly to a deep half alignment, and then Ardarius would scoot or switch to the middle of the field, essentially trying to run the middle of the between the hashes in a Tampa 2. I just don't think this is the greatest disguise of this from the standpoint of the progression of how often we've shown that look and played Tampa 2 in recent weeks. Pretty much in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I feel like I've seen this. Again, this is a little bit going off of memory. I would say 6 of 8 times or 6 of 9 times that we've actually shown that look, we've used it to generate or produce the outcome of a Tampa 2. Example here of us playing what looks like man and then switching to zone. Even though this doesn't work out, it's a 3rd and 7, by the way, early in the game for Cleveland. Nate Wiggins is going to drive. I actually thought he tackled the tight end short on this one, but they ruled that he got the first down because the very next play is determined to be a first and 10. But the yard to gain is actually the 19, as you see here. So if you think it's the 20-yard line, it's not. So that could be why he's determined to get the first down. But in any case, I love situations where because so many NFL teams, college teams, show motion in order to sift out the coverage. And then because of Marlon's ability to play inside corner, slot, nickel, and outside corner, we can do this as we wish. Switch to another version of the Tampa 2. I think Brandon Stevens is the guy who would be responsible for a vertical. I do still feel like there's too much space here between Stevens and this tight end. I get it that we want to recognize or we want to respect, receivers lined up as 2 as a potential vertical route here, but you're just not getting one. There's no vertical that's developing here necessarily that can't be handled by the safety. And so what I mean by that is, I know this is a video about Nate Wiggins, but Stevens, I think, could be a little bit more attached to that tight end. I don't mean right next to him, but such that the window isn't this large. Looks like a 4 or maybe 5-yard differential. Let's call it 4 yards between those two. This vertical can be handled by the safety. The landmark that we would use is, if he is closer to the hash than he is to the top of the numbers, then you can run the middle of the field between the hashes and help handle that vertical. In my opinion, that guy's right there, pretty much outside of that area. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. I think Brandon Stevens essentially could be a little bit closer in coverage there. It's a dime look. We don't have a second inside linebacker off the field. Board and Harrison are not on the field, so we're generating a 4-man rush. You can see Brandon Stevens. You can just barely see him right there on the left-hand side of the screen. We're talking about Nate Wiggins, but that's all. It's all related. I love the ability to change coverage. And when we have Humphrey, Wiggins, and some other outside corner over there on the opposite side, whether it's Tre'Davious White or Brandon Stevens, we can do those types of things. He's actually running underneath here, and this is going to be a roughing the passer call on Travis Jones on a 3rd down. This is the touchdown drive, I believe, for the Cleveland Browns. That's Wiggins. He's lined up inside. Tre'Davious White as an outside corner. Brandon Stevens over on the left. So we're in our dime look again. We got 6 DBs on the field along with Marlon Humphrey, Ardarius, and Kyle Hamilton. So Marlon's got outside leverage, and he's funneling this route into Ardarius to handle that. We're leaving Wiggins solo on the tight end. I think that he's got absolute capability to do these things. I wish that at times he was a little bit closer when he's playing the slot, but it's a chip release by the tight end, so he's not exactly sure what to do in the moment that he's seeing this chip, and then the tight end's going to release here to the outside and then run the vertical. Basically what I'm saying is I wish that we were a little bit closer right now such that there didn't look to be so much space for the quarterback to potentially throw it, but we know that Zappy's dealing with a lot of pressure, and then Travis Jones, kind of a soft quarterback roughing the passer call, but I get it. You can't make contact with the guy. It looked like he shoved him. I just think it's a 345-pound guy on his tracks, incapable of slowing down immediately. I think this is the same drive, third down. I maybe misspoke a moment ago. This is actually a drive where they get the touchdown. Interesting play call here by Cleveland. Empty screen, which we've had trouble with in the last 2 or even 3 years, to be honest with you. But it's a 3rd and goal. I want to see you throw the ball to try to score to get into the end zone if I'm actually trying to root for your team. I'm not obviously for the Browns, but Ardarius is able to fill the alley. Why? Because Nate Wiggins forces it inside. He basically sets the blocker inside the way that you should, and then that is the alley that Ardarius runs in, basically forces the tight end to catch it in that alley. So he's versatile. He's obviously fast, talented, got great ball skills. We saw that. Well, he did have some drops earlier in the year, so I guess we can't say great ball skills yet. He displayed those ball skills against Cleveland, let's put it that way. And he's also able to fit into the defense in multiple spots, if you ask me. I think this is a really great rep. This is against Jerry Jeudy later in the game. I think we're into the 3rd quarter. Marlon running across, so we've obviously got man. And there's really nothing on this ball by the quarterback, for real. There's nothing, there's no pace, no velocity on this ball. Van Noy getting pressure as he's releasing, but he's not, okay, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not able to put his foot in the ground and drive on it because he's going to get hit. I still think there's an opportunity to get something on this ball. So that probably does help Nate Wiggins out some in terms of keeping up with Jeudy. I didn't think Jeudy was very efficient in Saturday's game, clearly related to the quarterback situation, but you're going to get the end zone angle here in a moment and see that, Nate Wiggins is competing. These routes that emanate from one side of the field to the other all season long, 2024, whether it's Jamar Chase, whether it's T. Higgins, or in this case, Jerry Jeudy, Wiggins is right there with him. I think he's a great pick. I thought he was a great pick on draft night. If we were to mention or say on draft night, hey, he's only going to get 1 interception, he's probably going to drop, I don't know, how many would you say he's dropped in the regular season? 2, I think. Feel free to let me know if you can remember more of them. But we're going to get tight coverage pretty much throughout the year. And when Arthur Millette goes down, and for whatever reason, who could have predicted that we wouldn't be able to play Marcus Williams pretty much at all this year? You could just slide or roll Marlon Humphrey right over to the nickel position. And that was really only afforded because of the high-quality play that we're getting out of Nate Wiggins. Were it not for him being ready to go completely from day one, we would have been in a lot of trouble with the injury to Millette, the difficulty, instability, inconsistency, whatever you want to call it, with Marcus Williams. We would have had difficulty trying to match up because there was the need to push Kyle Hamilton to the back of the defense along with Ardarius Washington. We had other options there. I know we drafted TJ Tampa, brought in Tre'Davious White via trade. I like the depth that we have. I think that Nate Wiggins will eventually be tested in this playoff run. We know that Brandon Stevens is a target magnet. He should be. There does not exist the same level of danger for a quarterback on certain routes. Back shoulder throws, back shoulder fades. Those types of routes, Brandon Stevens does not make a play on those balls. Nate Wiggins has had some issues with those concepts as well, but not to the degree that Brandon Stevens has. I do think eventually in this playoff run he will be tested, meaning there will be some quarterbacks who don't just say, I'm going to go over there at Brandon Stevens every single snap. And I think it could happen this week. Basically, when the ball is on our left hash for the defense, the right hash for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, George Pickens is going to be into the boundary to our left-hand side, and that is the side where Nate Wiggins lines up. It's a huge matchup, in my opinion, in those situations. Now, when the ball's on the left hash for the offense and the right hash for us, then he's going to be matched up with Brandon Stevens, and we'll have to make the decision, do we want to move Marlon Humphrey over there and play dime and get Stevens away from that matchup? He's been beat by tight ends. He got beat by a tight end last week for the Browns. Freiermuth beat him, I think, twice this year in dime situations. It's pretty obvious what's going on with this defense from a Brandon Stevens standpoint. As the year's gone on, they've trusted him less in those situations, tried to mitigate the impact that he can have on the known routes that he just either can't make a play on the ball or, forgive me for being too harsh, just can't cover. Nate Wiggins, those holes do not exist in his game, in my opinion, at least not what we've seen so far. You're welcome to let me know what you think of that thought in the comment section, and or the plays that I chose here to illustrate how well he's played in his rookie year, even though he missed, I think, week 1 of the season due to injury. We're looking at, I think, a great pick for the present and the future out of Clemson, a guy who was extremely highly rated, and the Ravens were fortunate enough to grab in the first round of the 2024 draft. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look at Nate Wiggins' rookie season, but particularly his play against the Cleveland Browns last week, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.